If you're watching this video, chances are you've heard wonderful things about Fulshear, Texas, and are considering a move. Today we're going to cover the things that make this community great, and a couple things that are a little bit harder to Google. Hi, I'm Carolyn Bauerschlag, a local real estate agent right here in Fulshear, Texas, helping people just like you relocate from all over the country right to our great city. Let's get to it. The number one pro of living in Fulshear is that people want to get closer to nature. If you talk to any resident, chances are they're going to tell you that they moved out to Fulshear to get away from the high density population of the city. And you pretty much get that, right? So when you drive down the main corridor of Fulshear, which is 1093 or the West Park Toll, you're going to see miles and miles of green pastures, mature trees. If you turn off of any road, you're going to find beautiful wooded areas, streams, people's country property. You really get the feel of having more elbow room between you and your neighbor. That being said, Fulshear is experiencing massive growth. As of 2025, the population is approaching 60,000 people, which sounds small when you compare it to the millions of Houston, Texas. But be mindful of the fact that that's nearly triple the number of people that we had in Fulshear just 5 years ago in 2020. Even still, people love driving out in Fulshear because they really do feel like they're out in country open air. And there really is a sense of community and a small town feel. Now, speaking of small town feel, another pro of living in Fulshear, Texas is that you do get a close-knit community. You have one high school for the whole town, so you get that Friday Night Lights football feel. You've got 5A sports, and you've got a really active chamber of commerce full of local businesses, right? People support each other. I think there's one courthouse, maybe a municipal one as well. People know each other, right? So whenever you go out to the store, you go out to a local business, you really are supporting members of that community. And I think people really like that feel. Another pro of living in Fulshear is, of course, the great neighborhoods. Now, Fulshear's really exploded in growth over the last 10 to 15 years, but as that growth has happened, I would say that there's been a pretty decent focus on making sure that these neighborhoods are built around nature, right? So people move to Fulshear for the nature, and it's kind of a conundrum, because as more people come, there's maybe perhaps less nature. But in an effort to make sure that people do still have that small town feel, and that they are living amongst the beautiful trees and rivers and things that we have out here. When you drive through communities like Fulbrook on Fulshear Creek, Cross Creek Ranch, you can really tell that the developers took time to make sure that they left things like mature trees or major grasslands in place. So even though these communities are only 10 to 15 years old, they don't have the feel of being brand new. One of the cons that I mentioned to you about living in other neighboring areas like Katy is that we have those baby stick trees all over. I would say there was a very pronounced effort to make sure that 100-year-old oaks are still a part of the neighborhood. Another major benefit of living in Fulshear, Texas are the great schools. Now, according to the Texas Education Agency, Fulshear High School, Lehman Junior High, and Huggins Elementary are all A-rated. Now, there's lots of new little elementaries that have all popped up in the last couple years to support the growth that Fulshear is experiencing, and I'm certain that as those elementaries age, they will also become A-rated. So no matter where you need to go or whatever school you want to send your child to, you're going to have that experience of a quality education here in Texas. Another major pro of living in Fulshear is that people escape to this area to get away from the hubbub of the city, but ultimately you are close enough to get into Houston. The main thoroughfare through Fulshear is going to be the West Park Toll, or 1093, and that's a straight shot into the Energy Corridor, the Galleria area. It gives you access to the Med Center and to downtown. So if you work or spend time in any of those areas, you probably will sit in traffic, but you don't have to get on a bunch of different major freeways to get where you need to go. Now, of course, there are the cons, and all of these cons center around the growing pains of being one of the highest growth zip codes in the entire United States. The first obvious con of living in Fulshear, Texas is that traffic is an unmitigated nightmare. 1093, or the West Park Toll, is the major thoroughfare that goes east-west through Fulshear, and up until just 2024, it was mostly a 4-lane road. The growth over the last 5 years in Fulshear was so aggressive that Fort Bend County said that we needed to turn this 4-lane road into a massive thoroughfare that will eventually be toll all the way till 359. So right now, it has just been stoplights about every half mile or so, and what they're building are massive overpasses at every single light so that you can actually make it out to Fulshear, and then it doesn't take you 30 minutes to get from Fulshear to Fulshear. This 1093 expansion project started in 2024, and it is projected to go until 2026. I drive this thoroughfare all the time. I take my dog, Lucky, to Wagon Tail's Pet Ranch, which is right near 359 and 1093. We've been going there for 10 years, and so I can tell you with firsthand experience that those overpasses are coming. They are almost done, and I would say that 2026 is probably a reasonable expectation for when it'll be good to go. Now, conversely, 1463 is the thoroughfare that runs north-south from 1093 or West Park Toll all the way up to 290. And 1463 acts as kind of the eastern boundary of Fulshear. Now, that construction project on 1463 started in 2022. It is 2025 at the time of this video, and they are less than halfway done with this expansion. Now, some will tell you that it was a more aggressive expansion than the West Park Toll, and I would argue differently. I think they just planned for it very poorly, right? So along 1463, there are a ton of local businesses. So you've got commercial real estate, you've got residential real estate, and it kind of just hooks and weaves all the way through from north to south. So there's a lot of surface area for them to cover. But what the rumor on the street is that when this project was bid or proposed by some construction companies, the company that was selected by Fort Bend County did not properly account for a switch lane. So whenever they had to shut down for construction, there was no budget to add the lane that they had to shut down and like make a baby lane for everyone to pass, which is insane, right? So cheaper is not better, and we all know that. But the net result of this is that going from a 2-lane road to a 6-lane road is going to take upwards of 6 years. Now, they say it'll be done by 2027, but based on what I have personally witnessed, there's not a chance. So I would expect it to go to 2028, and hopefully they will pull it together. What this means for you is that if you're considering moving to Fulshear, you need to be prepared to wait. Add a little extra time to wherever you're going so that you're not late every single time. Another major con of living in Fulshear, Texas is that cell phone service is a challenge. Now, fortunately, the city of Fulshear did vote in 2025 to add 4 different cell phone towers. And that sounds kind of crazy, right? Because it's 2025. Like, why are we just now thinking about this? But the truth is that residents were resistant to the change. These cell phone towers are large. They're several stories tall. And a lot of people said, hey, I didn't move to the country to look at a giant cell tower, right? But the reality is that the more people you have come out here, the more people need to be served. So those 4 towers were voted in, and my hope is that we all won't have to use Wi-Fi enabled calling for all eternity out in Fulshear. Another major con of living in Fulshear is that utility and service providers are catching up to the demands of the people who are living there. So right now, if you move out, you're going to turn on water and you're going to say this water is really hard. You probably need a water softener, right? Like we just haven't caught up to like getting refined water. We're just working on making sure that these areas do have water service. Another issue is that if you need fiber optic internet or cable for your job, you're not going to get it. Right? Comcast is the predominant one who's offering service right now, and there really isn't another option. So you'll hear people complain about spotty service. Our hope is that with time, all of those utilities and kind of modern comforts will come through. But keep in mind that we've tripled the population in Fulshear in a matter of 5 years. Another major con of living in Fulshear that's rather hard to Google is that there's really significant overcrowding at schools. Naturally, if you triple a population in 5 years, there's going to be a huge influx of children that come along with those people, right? So when you consider that there's 1 major high school, 1 major junior high, and I mentioned earlier that there's a couple new elementaries, that's great. But no one can properly estimate how many children are going to be coming into the school system at that fast of a rate, right? So what Lamar Consolidated ISD has done in an effort to keep up with growth is do something called proposing bond elections to the public. But bond elections are very misunderstood amongst the general population. So essentially what a school district is asking the public for is a mortgage. So they go to the public and they say, hey, we're growing so fast that we can't save up our pennies and dollars from your tax bills fast enough to build the schools that you need while you're here. So they go to the public and they say, we would like to raise bonds, or put differently, debt, that's similar to a mortgage, and we need you, the population, to agree to it. Now, what people hear is you're mismanaging money, or they hear my tax rate's going to go up. They're going to hear, I don't know how anyone's going to pay for more debt. I don't like debt. But the reality is that they're just looking for a mortgage, and they will use your property tax dollars to pay down that debt over time. So the most common scenario is that your property tax valuation actually, or your property tax assessment doesn't actually go up, but people just say no to more debt. And so they quite literally shoot themselves in the foot. So over the last decade, I would say about half of the bond elections that the Lamar Consolidated has put forth have been shut down. So one big thing that we're hoping for is that in the 2025 bond election that is put up for Lamar Consolidated, that more people will recognize that the only way to solve these overcrowding problems is to really let these school districts have the mortgages that they're looking for to build the schools repair existing facilities, hire more bus drivers, get more buses, and really accommodate the people that are coming to the area. The last major con of living in Fulshear, Texas is that locals really are resistant to the change. Now, if you listen to people talk, they will say that I lived out here 10 years ago and we only had a population of 4,000 people. Or they'll say, I moved out to Fulshear specifically to get away from the hubbub or the density of Houston, Texas. And they're extremely frustrated by the fact that more and more people come out to the area. But this is a knife that cuts both ways, right? People are also very excited that because of the demand on the area, that their property values are going up. They're excited to see that there are more grocery stores, there are more creature comforts that are available to them as Fulshear residents, right? But I would say that if you listen a little more closely to what they have to say, they say that they're open to the growth, but the way in which it's happened is something that they find objectionable. So there's a school of thought that perhaps that city council are approving projects for the sake of raising city revenue and not really giving thought to the way in which it's being done. So locals will say that they want to see more regulation over what trees can be taken down, what the water rights are in the area. Like, is there too much strain on the water that is available in Fulshear, Texas? Are we thinking about how big the roads need to be and how that obstructs the small town feel of Fulshear, Texas that people find so attractive, right? So I think it's that classic struggle between what was and what is, the nostalgia of the past versus the reality of the future, right? And so when you move to Fulshear, I think you will hear people very openly complain about people that weren't even here 10 years ago. All that to say, for any area that you're considering, there's always great things and there's always a couple of challenges. So if you're considering a move to Fulshear, Texas, I would love to be your realtor. And if you found value in this video here that you watched today, make sure to click the link below and subscribe. We put content like this out every single week. See you soon.